guys, Michael Joe with the Vintage Trading Post. It's December 20th, 2021. Wanted to wish all of you guys a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. It's been a while since I did a video. Couple topics that have been brought up over the last couple weeks to couple months. Some of them that you guys are all talking about. So I just wanted to take a couple minutes and talk about, well, let's talk about BGS and PSA, basically grading card companies in general. A lot of people talking negative about them with the price increases, the turnaround times. So I want to just talk to you guys about it. Again, a lot of people starting to, I don't mean to be mean about it, but it almost sounds like they're whining about it, about the turnaround times, about the fees, about the grades they're getting back and stuff. I mean, let's talk about it. I'm going to dive right in. So, first of all, I see some new companies coming out. I'm sure you guys know about it. You guys see it in the groups and whatnot. Here's the thing. With grading cards, especially valuable cards like vintage MTG cards, it's all about reputation. I know PSA and BGS are kind of going through a little rough time right now, but I think all these new grading card companies are going to go through the same problems, and if not, they're also going to have growing pains in the process. Again, it's all about reputation. These grading card companies that are coming in just don't come in with a great reputation. They're going to have to earn it. For some of these companies, it's going to take years, maybe even decades, to form a good reputation. And I don't care what else they grade. They could grade other products. In my personal opinion, BGS is still the king, even though there's a lot of issues going on right now. I still think they're the king. But the reason I'm doing this film, if you would, this movie, is I want to talk mainly to the newer people. I'm seeing in the groups a lot of new people to the graded community, which is, perfect. Welcome to the community. But right away, they're coming in and they're shitting on PSA and BGS. And I think they're just following the lead of a couple people. And that ain't right. I mean, these people weren't around, these collectors, these new collectors, they weren't around for BGS, 6, 7 years ago, or PSA for that matter. I think that they need to have an understanding of what exactly took place and why some of the older collectors and investors are so upset with BGS and PSA right now. So, nonetheless, I want to get into it. So, what about BGS and PSA, you ask? Well, I'm seeing some interesting things, but it's very sad at the moment with these two companies. Everything that's transformed over the last couple months to the last year or so is like the perfect storm. So what happened? Why is BGS and PSA so expensive lately? Why is the turnaround so long? Will the grading fees ever drop? Will the graders ever become more lenient with their grades? I mean, that's the hot topic right now, guys. You got a lot of people getting their grades back, and they're not happy with the grades. I could attest. I'm looking at some of the grades on some of the cards, and they are definitely undergraded severely. There's a couple of them that I think are still slightly overgraded that I've seen, and for the most part, I think they're fairly graded, but there are quite a few that are getting through that are very undergraded. So let's get into the history here. So 6 years ago, the hobby of MTG was exploding, and a lot of people were getting into it. The cost of grading a card was so much cheaper back then, significantly. I remember, I was paying, I think, $25 a card, and that was like for a 20-day service. I don't remember the exact numbers, but nonetheless, significantly cheaper than what it is today. So many of us older collectors, if you would, were sending in hundreds of cards for submission. With any learning process, it is a learning process to new collectors, new investors, anyone that submits cards. And for us, we were inexperienced, at least for the most of us. We sent in a lot of submissions, and unfortunately, they yield some unexpected weak grades. As time went on, we learned what the grading card companies were looking for, and we were a lot more careful on what we sent out, to avoid congesting the grading card companies with cards that overall should not have been graded. Well, then the values of the MTG cards in general, not graded cards, but MTG cards in general, spiked between 2016 and 2018, as did the value of graded cards, and the graded cards went up quite significantly. Well, what did this do? This attracted a lot of new collectors to the hobby, but it also attracted investors as well, something the hobby didn't really see. Suddenly, investors were buying raw collections, I mean, at ridiculous prices, and then sending in hundreds of cards for submissions at a time. When these investors would receive their cards back, they would sell them at much higher, values to newer collectors that were getting into graded, and they were making a ton of money. Some investors would even go out and buy already graded cards, and they were pretty decent prices at that time. And they would go out just seeking people that were looking for this specific card. When the investor would find a collector, maybe a set collector or a collector of a certain card, they would get in contact with them, and they would sell this graded card to the specific collector at a much higher value. And that collector would pay the investor that money. This was known as flipping a card. It was a process that would bother a lot of the graded collectors, the older ones, especially graded set collectors. Uh, you know, they worked hard to try to put the set together, and then there were people just capitalizing off of it. But at the end of the day, guys, this was business. They're investors, not collectors. That's the difference. People like me felt that flipping would discourage new collectors from the hobby, which overall hurts the hobby. It hurts the collectors. It even hurts the investors. We want more people into this. We want to keep growing more and more people into this. Okay, so that's 2016, 2018. So let's go over the next few years. Grading companies were receiving a lot more MTG submissions, plus everything else they grade, sports cards, comic books, whatever they grade, they were getting a lot of that too. But there was an influx of MTG. Soon these companies became overwhelmed and short-staffed. Like with any growing business, the companies had to hire more help, which caused two more problems. The companies had to raise their grading fees, obviously to pay for the help. And then there was new help. That's the second problem. New. They were inexperienced. I mean, I'm sure they go through some type of training, but they don't know alpha, the corners on alpha cards. They don't know a lot of stuff about Magic. So now you had graders that didn't really know much about MTG graded cards. And, well, we're going to come back to that in a little bit. So after 2018, now you got a new wave of collectors, investors, card graders that were just entering the hobby. This caused yet another problem, but in a good way. Now, the population of graded cards were increasing, but so were the number of collectors and investors. So think about it this way. We'll look at the 2017, 2018 time. This is when I saw a huge spike. At this time in the hobby, if the number of graded collectors jumped 50 to 100% within a year, which they did, but at the same time, the rare, expensive vintage MTG card populations, they only went up 15, 20%. Well, what did this do? This caused a huge supply versus demand issue. I know in my previous episodes I've talked about it, but this caused the value of graded cards to go up even more. This is exactly what happened back then. So now there's this new spike in value, which attracted even more collectors to the hobby and even more investors. It seemed like overnight the grading companies were receiving more submissions than they could even handle. However, more of these new submissions were sent in as economy levels. I don't remember the exact phrase like BGS would use, but there was no time frame for a turnaround. People sent in unguaranteed grading fees, their cards in for unguaranteed graded submissions. I apologize, guys. Still drinking my coffee. The grading companies the grading companies realized this, and they took their time, but they weren't expecting the next problem. And we all know what the next problem was. Well, the next problem was COVID-19. Some people are confused, but COVID-19, the pandemic, keeping politics out of it, this basically shut down businesses by law, including BGS, PSA. Well, this threw a monkey wrench in everything. With piles and piles of submissions sitting in warehouses already from all the cheaper fees months prior to this, the grading card companies had to eliminate most of their service just to catch up with those previous submissions. So that's what they ended up doing. They first canceled all the services except for like the premium ones. And what did they do? They raised their prices on that. Now they were charging ungodly amounts of money for one card. And the turnaround on that was like 10 to 20 days. And that was still insane. And a lot of people now, a lot of these graders and investors are thinking twice about sending cards in. So let's go back to that topic of the new graders I was talking about. So over the last 2 or 3 years, the new graders have emerged. As most of us can contest to, they're grading extremely hard. And this is causing both collectors and investors to collectively become very frustrated. Okay. Over the past year, the backlog of submissions is starting to finally move again. However, the graders have become extremely tough on grading these cards. Lower than expected grades are coming out. Um, this is what all the frustration's about today, guys. I know this all sounds a little redundant, but I think a lot of people are getting upset. I think you got in those two waves of new collectors, they thought, oh, and even investors, and the investors were even worse, the new investors, they said, oh my God, look at all these people making money with Magic. Hey, I'm going to send in, you know, uh, 50 cards from the Urza's block, and I'm not talking about iconic cards. I'm talking about the less iconic cards. I'm not talking about foil. I'm talking about straight up cards. And they were getting 8.5s and 9s back. But what did that do to us, to the rest of us? It clogged the pipe. You know what I'm saying? It clogged the system. Now BGS is grading a bunch of cards. That's just one example. But you get, 400 people like that sending cards that shouldn't be graded in. And I understand it's part of the learning curve, but that's what's screwing it up. That's what bottlenecking everything. Um, Again, I know there's a lot of hate right now for the grading card companies. So let me get back to this. A few years ago, I said that. I talked about vintage Magic cards, especially due to the low print runs of the 93, 94 Magic cards. Eventually, there's going to be less and less to find out in the wild, raw, that is. You're not going to find them. You're not going to be able to find them and grade them and do what we did 5, 10 years ago. It's just not going to happen. Um, as you guys can see, 9.5s are getting harder and harder to find that are already graded. Out on eBay, out in the groups, they're just harder and harder to find. Guys, this is going to continue. I talked in a couple episodes, probably about 2, 3 years ago. Um, the grades in the population, they're not going up like they used to. Okay, this means more and more collectors and investors enter the hobby of graded MTG. The values of the 93, 94, I'm sorry, and with the 93, 94 cards, they're just going to continue to go up. Again, I talked about this a couple episodes, a couple years ago, but I'm starting to see 9s and 8.5s of certain things starting to increase in value. Told you guys that was going to happen. You're seeing it with Alpha and Arabian Nights right now. The prices of 8.5s and 9s are a lot higher than they were a couple of years ago. Why? Because the 9.5s are impossible to find, and collectors want the Arabian Nights and the Alpha, so they're paying a little bit more for the lower grades. This is going to continue. This isn't going to stop. This increase in value of 8.5 and 9s, they're going to go into the other 93 and 94 sets over time. Mark my words, Legends, Dark, you're going to see it. You're starting to see a little bit of it with Antiquities right now. Silver Age cards, hey, they're going to keep going up too. Not at the rate that they were going up over the last 2 years, but they're going to continue to progressively go up. Anything reserve list too. Obviously, that goes without saying. So, as for the economic year of 2022, I think MTG in general is going to fare well, unless there is a global recession or depression that would occur. Inflation's going up, guys. So I can't make a bold prediction like I normally do, but just remember one thing. Throughout the economic history of Magic, Magic has always fared well in bad economic times. If anyone that doesn't believe me, they could go look it up. Look at some of the times when we were in recessions. MTG did pretty good. As for the graded card companies, guys, I think you guys need to give them a little bit of slack. Those who spent a lot of money sending a bunch of cards, I get your frustration. You sent them in, you paid the $200 a card or whatever it is, and you're getting the cards back. They're coming back 8.5s and 9s. I get it, guys. All I can say is be patient. We've seen the waves. I sent in an Arabian set and an Antiquity set, full sets. 100 card Antiquity set, 93 card Arabian Night set. Uh, Late in 2018, around, I don't know, in BGS it was that 106, 107 range maybe. They graded me extremely tough. I was very disappointed. I'm not saying I'm God's gift to grading, but I mean, I could tell you whether a card is 9.5 or a 9 for the most part. I really thought some of those were going to grade very high, and half of them came back 9.5, which I know I sound like a brat because right now nobody's getting 9.5s, but back then I really thought most of that collection was going to get 9.5. I weeded out cards that I felt weren't going to get 9.5, replaced them with better copies when I sent it in, and overall I wasn't happy. So I understand the frustration of everybody. But shortly after it, they went opposite. Then they got too lenient with cards. Me personally, I do not like the 112 series. I don't like the 115 series of BGS. I think they were graded very leniently. I own a couple of the overgraded cards. I got quite a few undergraded cards as well too, so it kind of all balances out. At the end of the day, guys, whether you're an investor or a collector, MTG has been very profitable and very rewarding. Profitable for investors, especially when they got in it years ago. And it's been very good and rewarding to people that are in it for the love of the game, for the hobby. Um, I love MTG. I've been in it since the very beginning of '94. I missed out on '93. I heard about it, didn't get into it. But for all you new collectors out there, I know you lean on some of us to guide you, okay? I don't care whether you believe me or not in these videos. I'm just here to give you my point of view on everything. Because somebody comes on and trashes PSA or BGS, that doesn't mean they're a bad company. They go through growing pains. They go through different waves. Right now, they're backed up and they're freaking out. They probably have X amount of graders and they're getting Y amount of submissions. But since they raised the prices and limit everything to one service, now they're starting to catch up. There's a lot of talk about population control. I don't necessarily know if I believe that's going on. It wouldn't surprise me if that's going on, but I don't think that's what's going on right now. A lot of you older collectors, some of my friends in the group, probably going to disagree with me on that. To each their own, guys. Like I said, the game is the game. Long term, MTG is still a great investment. I think BGS and PSA are both grading companies that they're going to be around 10 years from now. I can't say that about the other companies that you guys are all talking about. Time will tell with that. You know, out of the 10 or 11 companies that I've heard that have come out of late, I'd be surprised if one or two of those survive overall. Um, CGC's been talked about. Me personally, I'm not a fan of CGC at all. I have my reasons. We've talked about it before. I'm not going to dwell into it. That company's been around a while, grading comic books and other stuff. I mean, they're new into MTG. Maybe 10 years from now, 5 years from now, who knows? I mean, maybe they will improve on their process. Um, but for now, I still stick with BGS, PSA if I need to. Um, there's cult favorites, of PSA. People love, certain people just love PSA. And I got nothing against those people or PSA in general. But what I'm telling you guys again is just relax. This is going to pass. A year from now, you guys are going to be bitching that they're overgrading the cards now. It comes in waves. Right now is a bad time. They're catching up. Um, for those of you guys that sent in cards at the economic levels back a year, 2 years ago, I understand your frustration about that. I get it. But that's what happens with a pandemic. I mean, by law, they were told to shut down. I mean, all the grading card companies, businesses in general. There's a small group of people that talked about suing the graded card companies. And I do have some law experience, and some of you guys are lawyers, but anyone could sue anybody for anything nowadays. I get that, but Beckett, I know for a fact, had a warning on there, and they're covered by it. Acts of God, worldwide. I don't remember if it was pandemics or what, but at the end of the day, no judge in their right mind is going to go against them because they're withholding cards and outside of their contract with you guys. It's just not going to happen. You guys want to try it, knock yourself out. I think it's a waste of money. Even in a class action suit, it's going to cost money, and it's just not worth it. I'd rather take that money and keep buying raw cards or whatever I can find of graded cards right now. 9.5s, that is. So, anyway, guys, that's it. That's all I got. That's my glimpse of what I see in 2022. I do think another wave is going to hit. It's going to make the previous two waves look fairly weak. I know that's a very bold prediction, but I'm fairly confident it's going to happen. Um, a couple of years ago, we saw the people from the 93, 94 era establish themselves, establish careers and families, get some extra spending money. That's what brought in the 93, 94 Magic Wave. Then you saw the next generation, that 98, that Urza's block, Tempest block, the Silver Age, if you would. The people growing up with that, they're established now, and they're getting careers, and they got money, so that's where you saw the Silver Wave. It's going to continue to go, guys. And people are going to get more money. if they're smart, they're going to get their money, and they're going to want to relive that nostalgia. They're going to want to relive 93, 94, or 97, 98. You know, I look at those world championship decks back in the day. Those are selling. People are trying to recreate those decks. Why? Because it's nostalgic. Those were good times. Magic was real fun. I'm not shitting on new Magic, but there's nothing like 93, 94. And vintage in general. I mean, you go up to that Mercadian. That's as far as I would go. Like, those were some good times playing, guys. And that's what it's all about. It's about the memories. It's about the game. Don't get too sucked into grading card companies and how they're screwing people. And I think it's just a bad time right now, and I think it's going to change. Anyway, I took enough of your time, guys. Um, about a month from now, I'm going to have a very special treat for you guys. I'm working on a new video. I think you guys are going to really like it. I will let you guys know when it comes out. So I also got my editing program back up and running. So I'm getting my graphics and everything again. So I'm extremely happy with that. If you guys have any questions, concerns, anything, reach out to me. I love to talk to you guys. I like to reach out and talk. I like to talk to other collectors. I found a lot of missing cards by reaching out to you guys and vice versa and establishing some great friendships. So anyway, one more time, Merry Christmas to all you guys. And I will see you guys in 2022.